And a very warm welcome to the Property Developers and Investors podcast. Nigel Greene here from the Echo Academy. And it gives me great pleasure this morning to have with us Tamas Rigo, a great friend of ours, been with us for a number of years now. Welcome, Tamas.
Hi, Nigel. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to talk to you anytime. And, it's an honor to be included in your podcast.
Oh, thank you very much. That's fantastic. Right. So we've got some real interesting questions for you. Just like to kind of just lift the lid in terms of Tamas and your business and the wonderful things you're doing at the moment. And I think it would be very appropriate in the first instance, maybe just to ask you to introduce yourself and maybe provide the listeners with a bit of background.
Of course, but I thought we would play, a game first. Would you be open for that?
Always up for a game.
Okay. So you might know the 3+1 when someone is stating 4 live facts, but only 3 of them are true, and 1 is a kind of lie, a white lie. So I will give you 4 live events, and I will ask you to guess which one is just made up. Okay. So the first one is at the age of 10, my buddies threw me into the deep side of the pool. When I was put out, I was not breathing. I had no pulse, but the guard successfully resuscitated me. Number 2, I used to be a massive Formula One fan. And for an entire race weekend, my full name, Tamas Rigo, was printed on the sides of the F1 race cars of Barrichello and Jenson Button. This was in 2006 at the Brazilian Grand Prix. Number 3, unfortunately, I was born with epilepsy, a really kind of debilitating condition, but I was successfully cured by the age of 14. And the last one, a good friend of mine, Anton Nimrod, who's a successful movie director in Hollywood, invited me to a party in 2006 when I was in LA. We went to Las Vegas, and that party became, the base story for the original Hangover movie. So, drowning at the age of 10, F1 cars with my name, epilepsy being cured, and the Hangover based story. Which one is not true?
Oh my goodness me. Oh my goodness me. I mean, I ideally hope the one that isn't true, or maybe 2, is number 1 and number 3. But it's one's got to be true, hasn't it? I know because I know you very, very well. I know you are a massive Formula One fan, and I believe number 2 is probably right. I'll be interested to know how that happened, but I think number 2 is probably right. Number 4 is an interesting one. I've never heard that from you in conversations of all the years I've known you. So I might go for, I think it's either 3 or 4, but I think I'm going to go for 4.
Wow, you're right, and it must be your martial arts intuition, because I tell you, I played this game quite a few times with people, and people, especially people who don't know me, I mean, they tend to go for the Formula One car thing. Because that I mean, you can have all kinds of life events. That's sounds a bit over the top, but you're right. I actually don't know Anton Nimrod. I wish I know our architect who designed our house. He worked with Anton Nimrod on a couple of Hollywood projects, but I don't know him personally. I hope, once. So congratulations, you got it right. So
thank you.
Let me kind of formally introduce myself. a few important things. I mean, for me, the most important thing in my life is, and I think that's true for most people, is my family. I'm an ex-corporate guy. It's in that sense, I think it's not a coincidence that we work with you, Attila and my business partner and I think we share many values with you and Mark. We're coming in somewhat from similar background. You've been long term in a long term corporate career. We had 20 plus years in multiple countries in local, regional, and global roles. And a couple of years ago, we both left the corporate world. We set up our company, Recast Property. I'm not new to the property world, but the projects that we're now embarking on, they are much bigger than what I've done mainly with my wife in the past. We've done many renovations. We built apartments in Budapest into airspace, and the most difficult and most challenging project was until the recent one that we are working on now is the house we built where I'm sitting now, because we obtained planning for this new build in 2014 in an area of outstanding natural beauty, green belt. I mean, you know the area. You are lucky. I told you and Mark how envious I was about your Runfold site, because it's only 800 meters from where I sit, but you're outside Greenbelt. You're outside, area of outstanding natural beauty, and I think that makes things somewhat less complicated. But it was a huge learning when we did this. It was a huge learning in that sense as well. Talking about property learnings, that I was probably a bit over ambitious, thinking that we've done all these things in the past, and how more difficult could be just building a single house. And then you learn that it is a much more complicated business in terms of planning. It is a much more complicated business in terms of building regulations. It is much more complicated business in terms of the oversight that you need to have, especially, I mean, we were unlucky because we had to fire our project manager very early in the process. And then Andrea, my wife, and we had to project manage the whole build until the certification. So I probably jumped into too much into the middle of it, but just a few things that I think it's worthwhile knowing. Sorry, and I didn't mention probably the most important fact, because people hear that my accent is obviously not a British accent. It's not a native accent. I was born Hungarian. I'm a naturalized English citizen as well. First time I came into this country was when I did my second university degree in the early 90s. When I went home, I worked for United Biscuits. Then I managed a company. Then in 1999, I joined British American Tobacco for 6 years in Budapest. Then I came to London into our global headquarters. Then I worked in our Hamburg office. Then I worked in Moscow, and then for the last between 2009 and 2020, when I left the company, I again worked at our global headquarters in London, central London. So that's it, basically.
Fantastic insight there, Tamas, and thank you for that. But it's interesting how it follows a journey that's quite common to a lot of people. Going into the corporate world, spending, I'm sure, many days away from the family for such a long period, and getting all the way up to that kind of heady height within those particular businesses, and getting to a point in life where things and observations become more of a priority, family being one, stability being the other, you know, freedom being another, and these sort of things. And, you know, I know how hard you've worked, you know, with Attila and others, you know, to get to where you've got to. And, you know, along that journey, and we all speak about adversity, don't we? We speak about the adversity of the moment and, you know, what we jump into. And but what it does, it makes us, gives us that experience, broadens our shoulders. So kind of the next time round, it's like, oh yeah, okay, I know what that is now. So we'll deal with it possibly in a different way, but we always learn, don't we? And that's the underlying factor. You always learn every step of the way, and that kind of makes the experience piece come into play, doesn't it? So yeah, well done for what you've done thus far, and you know there's going to be some amazing things going forward. In terms of property, what made you choose property as a vehicle to wealth and success?
What made me choose is, I think, two things. One was experience. The second was a kind of passion. I mean, I can't remember if I told you about that, but when I was starting to prepare, you know, for my departure from corporate back in 2016, 17, there was a short period when I got really excited about, you know, technology startups, and I was spending a lot of time learning about, you know, technology startups, actually working up, you know, concepts. And I can tell you outside the podcast what was the one that is going to be, I think, for someone at one point a huge business or part of a huge business. But I mean, after spending a lot of time with that, and then when it came to the decision around, you know, 2019, that okay, I knew that I wanted to leave in 2020 because that was when my son finished at RGS Guildford, moved to university. So that was always the milestone I set for myself, you know, leaving the corporate world. And when it became seriously about making the decision, I had to weigh up also, you know, my experience. And I knew that in a tech startup, I mean, I would burn through our assets much faster, and you would have to, you know, constantly raise, you know, money all the time, which is in some sense similar to property, and especially we're moving now in an inflationary environment, you know, permanently raising funds is probably going to become the norm, not the exception. But when I had to, you know, say, look, okay, if I look at my strengths against other people who would, you know, move into the same space, probably seeing what we do, copying it, blah blah blah, I had to take a step back, and ultimately I said, look, you're probably going to burn through your, you know, the monies, the asset that you built up over a long career, you know, slower in property, and you will have better chances, you know, to succeed and get further faster than in the technology world. So that's how the decision was made. I was relying on my, you know, skills that I built over a long career. I was relying on experience that I built on property projects that we done on the side. I was relying on the positive experience on generating money out of property, money out of property assets that we built over time. So passion and experience versus higher risk, let's say, put me into property.
I see. Yeah, absolutely. Do you think there will be a point in time where they may, you know, may reconsider that position and maybe have a look at the startup?
Uh, I think by the time I get there and I will have the ability, that space will be occupied,
Got you.
because that type of technology, the combination of technologies that will facilitate what I was referring to, is now very fast emerging. And the other reason why I was not attempting to do it, because the other problem in technology, you never know until the company comes out on the market,
Yeah.
who is already working on it.
Yeah.
So there might be companies, and I have one company in mind, who actually might be working in the background on that technology already.
I see. I see. Really interesting. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. I mean, in terms of kind of the key milestones, achievements, in your property journey thus far, could you tell us about some of those?
Yeah, yeah. For everyone, I think the first milestone when you buy your first home, and for that was already, I mean, back in 1994, so quite a long time ago, and already in that, I think we, with my wife, we managed to be a bit inventive, because apart from the seed capital we had at that time, I mean, back in Hungary in 1994, there were no mortgages. It was very difficult, therefore, to get bank loan. But because my company at the time, United Biscuits, was very keen to keep me happy, because there were not many guys around in Hungary at the time who graduated from the US or the UK, and kind of demonstrated the skills, the attitude that I was demonstrating in the first year of working for the company back there, and also for the industrial placement year that I spent with the UK company over here. So they were quite keen to keep me happy. So I went to the company and told them that, look, guys, I'm a bit fed up with paying a significant percentage of my salary into for tenancy. Would you be able to provide me a loan to buy our first property? And we were working through some terms and conditions, and they provided me a loan, which was at the time half the annual interest rate than the bank rates at the time. So that was a major milestone, because otherwise it would have been very, very difficult to get on the property ladder. And from there, each time when we bought another property, we bought a property that we were able to add value. I mean, probably the next big milestone was a few properties further, actually two or three properties further down the line, because we were doing this, I mean, every second year, basically. In 1999, when I moved back to Budapest, we bought our first property in a very special up-and-coming place. And again, by clever adding value, still to date, my best property deal, we had over 15 months, more than 80% annual return, between buying, spending on the place, and then selling it. That property was also special. I keep kind of pulling the legs of UK agents and lawyers, solicitors with that, because when things are slow, I like to ask them the question, look, guys, do you know what was the fastest time for me to buy a property in Budapest? From the time I set foot on it until the time we signed the contract and actually pay the money, and they come up with all kinds of predictions. What is your tip? What is your
I know you so well with these questions, and I know some of the amazing stuff. So you're probably asking the wrong person, because I reckon it's the number of hours. I reckon it's down to, let's say, 8 hours.
You're a guru. You're an Eastern guru, Nigel. It was 13 hours.
13 hours.
13 hours from the time they picked up the phone. We went in, and then basically became owners of the property. And within 2 weeks, they moved out.
That's nice.
And the next big milestone was when the first time, we acquired properties as investments. So we were never lived in those. That was in 2006, and then the first kind of new build that was into airspace in 2008 and 9. And then I already mentioned that we built our first real kind of greenfield new build from scratch, from out of the ground in 2014 and 15. And then it is now. I mean, now with the current 2 projects, that's again a step change up in terms of complexity, in terms of challenges. I mean, I never had to work on a deal where at any point in time we had between 6 and 8 lawyers involved, and that's just, I mean, almost crippling. Lawyers in this country. Sorry for solicitors if anyone is listening to this country, but it is a humongously slow and artificially difficult process.
It is absolutely. And I now I fondly recall a situation when I was in the corporate world, actually, and we were doing a particular quite complex deal. We were securing a development. It's actually a renewable power station, so it's quite a complex one. And the legal process was going on, and somebody, we were almost there, then somebody would raise a question or a point, and you have to go all the way around again. We're talking about a similar number of lawyers that you were just experiencing. And I just got absolutely to the end of my tether. I was getting pressure from above, the sides, the bottom, everything. It was all coming at us. And I called a meeting, and it just makes me smile now, where I was in that place back then. But I literally called a meeting, got all the solicitors in one room, and I walked into the room. And as I closed the door, I turned the key and I took the key, and I said, nobody's getting out of this room until we've agreed this deal.
That's the way. Do you know I think it's a quite infamous story about the first Mars expedition that the NASA was preparing, and I mean the different teams were just not incorporating, and ultimately the head of the mission decided that, okay, guys, from now on we'll only have the program progress meeting Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock. And suddenly they started to agree with each other from that moment on. When you're eating into your so awaited weekend, they started to properly talk to each other during the week as well.
Yeah, absolutely. These tips and tricks of, I guess we're talking around project management, really. I mean, it's management of an outcome ultimately, isn't it? And again, some projects that I've worked on, the AWE, the Atomic Weapons Establishment, and MOD activity, and they've got an amazing technique. I forget what they call them, but they're 10-minute meetings in the morning at 8 o'clock every single day, and nobody's allowed to sit down. Okay, there's no niceties of teas or coffees or chocolate hobnobs. There's none of that. Okay, you're literally, and most of the time they will have the meeting outside, even in inclement weather. And the meeting is 10 minutes, and everybody gets a chance to say their thing in terms of what the activities are, be it today or over the next week. And 10-minute meeting starts, round the cut, stops, and everybody goes. It is really. So the chocolate hobnob and the cup of tea is, inversely supportive of getting things done, I think. So it's interesting, very amusing ways that people get things moving forward.
Indeed.
So, I mean, I guess we've kind of touched on a few challenges, that we've had along the journey, really. But I'd like to just ask you, because the reality is things don't always go according to plan. That is the reality of life. Could you take us through something that you've encountered unexpectedly, and how you overcame the challenge? And it could be personal, it could be property, business related, but yeah, I'd like to hear.
I probably have to, for the worst moment in my career, I probably have to go back very far in the past. And again, this takes me back to 1994, I think 1994, October. On arrival back, from the UK after graduation, I was given a huge, vote of confidence from United Biscuits over there. They, after a very short period of time, something like 3 months, accommodating myself into the local company, which was a market leader in all his fields over there. They gave me, the challenge to lead the outsourcing of the entire logistics operations of the company. And I knew, from my studies that normally, you do after 5-10 years of experience, solid experience in the industry. So I had to take it very seriously, and we went through a really good tendering process. We picked a Dutch logistics company over a 14-15 months project time. We basically built up their capabilities in Budapest to take over, the previously decentralized logistics operations at a centralized space. It also meant that we had to, before full go live, we had to start to build up stocks over there. We've done the right things. We started to split, the distribution to the retailers and to the big retailer warehouses between the existing and existing decentralized network and then the centralized. So we did all the right things, and then just 2 days before go live, and this was a Saturday. I was at home, and the phone went off, and the local managing director of the distribution or logistics company called me and said, Tamas, I need to ask you to come here. I said, Jensen, what's going on? Tamas, just please jump in the car and come here. Okay, so I drove to Budapest, arrived at the central warehouse, and you saw right away the chaos. Mm-hmm. And they at that point, they didn't even know what is causing the chaos. Why the forklift truck drivers go to a rack and they find a different product over there than what is designated to that location in the system. So obviously they were, and this was the point where we would have switched all our sale distribution of the sold products to this central warehouse. So I asked a few questions. I learned that they don't understand what's going on. The managing director was saying that, look, Tamas, okay, we can do this and this and that to make sure that we can at least serve the biggest customers. And I said to them, Jensen, no, you don't see. We can't do that because we would only increase the chaos. You have to stop. I have to go, not even Monday, tomorrow. I have to call my top team, telling them that temporarily we will take back distribution to the decentralized network. I will set up a meeting by Wednesday. Between now and Wednesday, the job is to find out what is causing this absolute chaos. And then on Wednesday, I want to present them an action plan, but which will take us where we want it to be on Monday. And basically, and it was massively difficult, to say that, because at the time when we pushed through, the outsourcing decision with my commercial director at the time, there was strong headwind against it. The finance director didn't want it because of the short-term finance impact of it. I mean, the medium to long-term business case was absolutely positive, but short-term there was a hit. So it was a difficult decision. I had to call the guys, told them that on Wednesday they have to meet me, and I will do this and this and that. And actually by Wednesday we found out what happened, and it's one of those really stupid things. I mean, the guys did many tests all the way up to the last moment, and you can't imagine, but a management trainee loaded into the real master database, the test data. So basically, the system generated the picking list and sent the pickers, the forklift trucks, to the locations where the test system basically coded the products. I mean, in that situation, it can be only by coincidence that you find what you're looking for. So that's basically, I mean, the learning over there was you have to be able to step back. You have to be able to take the hard decision. Otherwise, I mean, you're just digging yourself into a deeper problem.
I totally agree. And yeah, that's an insight into a major issue that was, captured. As you say, sometimes you do have to stop. You do have to stop. And I've experienced situations very, very similar to that. Different sector. I mean, we're in data centers and those sort of things historically, and we had we were sent all around Europe actually in terms of troubleshooting when data center builds were going wrong, and there was issues and on all these sorts of things, and we were posted from the UK over into a site in Holland. And in Amsterdam actually, and we went there and literally we walked onto site because it's eyes wide open at that point, isn't it? Eyes and ears wide open. And the health and safety was poor. We were met by a gentleman. Imagine this is a building site, and we all know what we do on building sites: hard hats, high vis. In our case, goggles, gloves, boots, and we were met by a chappie who was surfing the main corridor on a pallet truck wearing flip-flops. And wow. that was what we were greeted with in a full construction site. And it was that somebody has to step forward and go, stop.
You have to say, guys, you have a leadership problem over
Absolutely.
here. The flip-flop is not the problem.
Yeah,
absolutely. You have a leadership issue. If that guy is he probably was in flip-flop yesterday as well, and nobody told him. Yeah, nobody taught him. My God.
It can be the smallest things that cause the biggest problems as well, can't it? And reevaluating, bringing the team together, and using a culture as well, which I think is really important. Of there's no blame. All it is finding solutions and moving forward. That sort of approach, really. So yeah, I totally resonate with that particular example, and fair play, you got it sorted out, and it's probably still going today absolutely perfect, which is wonderful. So
it's I mean, there's been loads of changes in that industry. United Biscuits is not anymore what it used to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Right. So a question. So lessons, just talking about lessons learned. So, what lessons have you learned along the way?
Obviously many, but I think we're running probably short of time, so I probably restrict myself only one. And I learned through many teams. I managed teams I was part of, non-functional, not functionally organized, but projects I've been involved with in different roles. That it is the most important that you surround yourself with people who share your values, but they complement your skills. I mean, you know that I'm a big believer of Covey's, 7 habits. You know, he said almost everything that has to be, said about human relationships in your private life and in your work and career and in your business life. And that is so important that you complement your weaknesses. What makes you successful in anything are your strengths and how well you can actually complement with people and actually cover your weaknesses by
Absolutely.
the strengths of other people.
Absolutely.
And but that only works if they share or have similar values to you, because otherwise I mean, values always rule over time, longer term, and the two have to, the values and this complementing strengths have to go hand in hand.
Absolutely.
That's I think is so important. It's
Totally
a
agree.
bit general thing, not that property specific, but
No,
uh, I think it's
very
core.
relevant. Yeah, very good. And what are your plans for the future?
I mean, in short, I mean, it's not a mission. Our vision is to build a company that we love to run, because I think we've done big things, at BET. I mean, especially Attila. You know his background, uh, but anytime in any environment when your choices are not your choices, you're not going to be happy. We want to build a company where our choices are our choices. It is difficult, especially in an environment that we're moving into, but even then, you make your choices. It's not like another part of the organization is making your choices. So
Yeah,
we want to enjoy what we're doing. We want to build a company that we enjoy to run, and we want to build a company that will give us, choices, give us the opportunity to do what we want to do. You don't want. I guess that's what you call freedom. I mean, you were referring to freedom at the beginning. It's
absolutely. Yeah, very much so. And you've got some great projects in the
Thank you.
pipeline at the moment, haven't you? Which is, very, very positive. Yeah, and going to be very exciting. I'm sure there'll be another podcast on those a bit later on, but that's
Hopefully.
fantastic. Yeah, I mean, you're probably aware. I featured in a wonderful book. Actually, it's really, really heartfelt. It was an opportunity. I was invited to write a chapter in a book called "Advice to Your Younger Self," and it's available on Amazon. And it was a moment for me just to reflect almost on my life, and given the time again, if I was in those younger shoes and I could speak to my younger self, the kind of little tips and tricks I would say to that person, to with the wealth of knowledge that obviously we all gain as we go through our years. Is there, could you give us your insight into that and what advice you would give to your younger self? What that would be?
Yeah, I know the answer to that question for 12 years, and that advice is that two actually. I mean, Rigo, never stop learning, never leave. Always every week, if possible, each day, do some self-education. Never leave your education, your training to your company. That's the serious one. And I got to that 12 years ago because I kind of neglected, the seventh habit about, self-regeneration for 10 years before that. And it impacted many things in my life, including, the tapering out of my career. The less serious but more important one is, I would say to myself, Rigo, you must, as that chick out who you saw on the 19th of December from one side of the river, having a sunbath on the other side of the river. That blonde chick, you go there next day, you must ask her out. That's probably even, not probably, it's even more important than the keep learning, never stop learning.
Fantastic. That's absolutely amazing. Tamas, I mean, I'm sure people would want to follow you after hearing this. I mean, it's a wonderful story, peppered with, experience and advice that you've got to give people. How can they follow you or get in touch?
Probably the easiest, if they Google Recast property, they click through to our website. Both Attila and I have our contact details in the get in touch section, and I'm sure they if they do some search on social media, they will find me on most social media platforms as well.
Absolutely, and I'm sure there'll be some very interesting sites to have a look at in due course, and maybe some site tours booked. Who knows? But
yeah, and they should check out my wife's new e-commerce site, ddoggy.com, gifts for dog lovers. Do that now, please.
I've seen that, and I tell you what, my wife is super excited about that website. So
I'm glad to hear. Thank you. It went live 3 days ago.
Indeed, really, really good, and well done to your wife for that. Tamas, just leaves me to say thank you. The opportunity to just spend a bit of time with you, dig a bit deeper, lift the lid on your experience in your life. It's just been super, and I'm sure the listeners will really enjoy listening to this.
Nigel, I already thank you. So thank you for inviting me. And I want to thank you at this forum as well for everything that you have done for Attila, me, and our joint venture partner, Kim. The most dangerous thing in any business is the unknown, or are the unknown unknowns. And, you're helping with us not to run into troubles because of the unknown unknowns. I've learned so much from you and Mark in the past 2.5 years. You've done so much for us. I want to thank you that as well.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. That's fantastic. So everybody's been listening here to the Property Developers and Investors podcast, and it's been fantastic to meet and listen to Tamas Rigo's story. Thank you very much, Tamas.
Thank you, Nigel.